You're listening to the Veteran Etc. podcast, as there's always more to be said about a veteran. Join your host, Mike Kim, a veteran, ex-monk, seasoned war trauma therapist, and writer, as he shares his years of research in veteran readjustment culture and the meaning of warrior life. Now, here's your host, Mike Kim.
Veteran Etc. This is a show not just about veterans and their veteran culture. It's more than that. It's about the inner subjectivity that happens, the relationships that happen between veterans and society, artifacts, the magazines, the movies, the books produced by veterans for society and for the veteran community. I'm your host, Mike Kim, and my concept of veteran readjustment culture goes deeper into understanding the intersubjectivity, the relationships that veterans have within themselves and also with society. This episode involves an audio essay titled Veteran Parents Being Good Enough. The psychoanalyst, Dr. D.W. Winnicott, out of England, coming out of the object relations school of psychoanalysis. Let me just explain some of that for all of you without the clinical background. And let me just say, even with the clinical background, it's difficult to understand. But basically, Winnicott comes from this school of therapy that says that the different, how could I say, images, the different representations that might come from our parents are internalized with our feelings. And he devised this concept, or he created this concept called the good enough parent. And it was circulated post-World War II England. And as we know, England experienced great difficulty during World War II, and it was rebuilding itself. Its population, its citizens were rebuilding themselves, their lives. And family life was obstructed by war. And Winnicott wanted to help families, help parents, as well. The baby boomers were being born. The World War II generation, that great generation, well, they were having a lot of babies. And how to parent was important. And there were a lot of reports in England that Winnicott experienced. Well, they were, let's just say, that mothering was very frustrating for the different encounters he had at his clinic. And mothers back then, as they do now, went through many challenges. Winnicott basically had this theory of the good enough mother, the good enough, I would say, the good enough parent. And I would say that especially veterans of this last war, 20-year war, I became a parent during this war, and I had and have many peers that also from the military also became parents. And in many ways, we weren't ready to be parents. We had our own readjustment issues after deployment, whatever that might be. You can't deploy into a war zone and expect everything to just be great. And the reality is, many children have been affected by their parents if they served in the military, especially if they served in war zone or on sea duty or assigned to another area outside of their immediate home due to the needs of the military, because we had shortages of troops in different areas. For example, my sister, before deploying to Afghanistan, she was assigned to Fort Jackson, and she had to leave her home in New York. And that happened 3 different times, or I believe 6 months each time. that can be wearing on a family. And if you've got children, that could be wearing. And so I would say out of all the psychoanalysts and psychologists and psychiatrists, Winnicott had something very special to offer, and that is to be the good enough parent. And this circulated throughout England, and it helped mothers accept the challenges of going through post-war England, as well as being mothers, when in many ways they weren't prepared to be mothers. And so I wonder if we could look at our lives and see how our family, our parents raised us. Are there intergenerational war readjustment issues there in those family members? I know my father experienced Korean War, served in the military, and also was a civilian during the Korean War. My mother, as a civilian, experienced the intervention by the United States in the Dominican Republic in 1965, experienced warfare there. My sister served in the military and experienced war in Afghanistan. So the thing is to look at these experiences that may not be my immediate experiences, but are experiences that in a way I kind of inherited, right? And maybe as I experienced raising my son shortly after my deployment from Iraq, all of the anxieties in many ways of my parents with their challenges, I inherited some of that. And so I've become throughout the years more aware and a lot more forgiving. And I've accepted my failures, and I face my failures as a parent. And I've apologized to my son and to others that I've affected. And that, in many ways, I believe, is being a good enough parent. The good enough parent is not the parent that is trying to compare him or herself to Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show. The good enough parent is not an image from the Brady Bunch with Mr. and Mrs. Brady. I believe the good enough parent is a parent that, whether he or she is not or is understood, is experience a certain sense of phenomenon, a mystery, a human mystery, a human experience that changes day to day. And that is added to the mystery of being a veteran day to day in readjustment. That mysterious feeling, perception, experience, encounter, being a veteran, being in touch with that, and making an authentic effort to provide as much as possible emotionally, financially, mentally, and spiritually to your child. And the good enough parent, also being a vet, it may be a challenge, might need to reach out to other veteran parents for help. Yes, I know it's difficult to reach out for help in being a veteran with veteran readjustment issues. But I would say reach out also for help in being a vet parent, because it matters. It can be transformative, even in failure. And at least, just like being a warrior, if you put your heart into it and your mind into it, you're good enough to get through. You're good enough to make it alive. You're good enough to deal with the situation of your service, whether in combat or not in combat. Being the vet parent is being good enough to your child, but also, in the end, being good enough to yourself as an actualizing parent day to day, moment to moment.
Veteran Etc. invites you to join us again with your host, Mike Kim, every Sunday. If the content from this podcast is informative to you, please share the podcast with others. Give a like and or post something you learned from the episode on social media. If interested in other truly informative podcasts like Veteran Etc., check out cominghomewell.com for a listing of other veteran-based podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.